Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of Dark Powerrr, where we cover everything that happens on AEW Dark, AEW Elevation, and of course, NWA Powerrr. Now, this week there are some interesting wrinkles to the championship series that we've got to talk about, but there were some pretty good matches that stood out to me when it comes to Dark and Elevation. So let's get straight to it. But before we do, guys, remember to hit that like button, comment, share, subscribe if you have not already. So let's talk about AEW Elevation. Elevation is continuing to do some good things when it comes to putting over the younger talent and giving them some time to shine. One of the things that I especially liked was the Jungle Boy Mark Quinn match, and that was actually pretty early on in the night. This is a really, really fun match between the two of these guys, especially because they are two of the younger talents within AEW, and Jungle Boy continues to impress as a singles star, and you gotta feel as though Jurassic Express are not really holding him back, but I wonder if there's doing him any favors at this point. I don't know if, because it feels as though he's kind of only on an excursion away from being a tag team member. And that's a fundamental question that they're going to have to answer soon, is whether or not Jungle Boy really is a tag team wrestler or a singles wrestler, especially when they keep touting the fact that he has the most wins in AEW. Those are, overall wins, but a bunch of those are still singles wins. Another thing that stood out to me was the tag match. This was Tay Conti teaming up with Chris Statlander to take on Matty Rankowski and the Bunny. We kind of have an idea here who is going to take the pin for this match, and it is going to be Matty Rankowski. But that being said, this was a nice little athletic match between the two. Fun seeing Chris and Ty working together. They made a pretty good tag team, I gotta say. And nice little spotlight for the women's division. Next, that thing that stood out to me was Lee Johnson and the Luther match. And this stood out to me for a number of reasons. One, we did not know we do not know going into it, who is going to be facing God's favorite champion, Miro, for the TNT title at the Homecoming event. Now, they teased it on Dynamite with having that segment where Miro is talking about who he could face. And we don't really know who he could be facing, but we know that it's going to be somebody. Now we find out on Elevation that this, I forget the guy's name, but this guy won a invitational tournament for the Elite General Manager mobile game. And because of that, he gets to pick Lee Johnson's opponent for the night from a list of pre-approved people. And if Lee Johnson wins, he gets a title shot against Miro. Couple things here. One, he's going to pick Luther, which is whatever. But it doesn't make you feel as though this guy has a chance, whoever he picks, has a chance of winning. Because why is it automatically Lee Johnson? Why is Lee Johnson getting this opportunity? Now, that being said, I like the fact that Lee Johnson is getting this opportunity. I just wish how they'd gone about it had been a little bit better. Explain to me why Lee Johnson's getting this match, why he's getting this opportunity. And if there had been some kind of heat behind it where this person, obviously if this guy's picking as a shoot, they don't know who he's going to pick. So it's harder to get some heat behind it. But at least if there had been a little bit more of a story, it just would have felt a little better. Now, to the match itself, pretty good match. All right, whatever. There is a little bit of a weird botch at the end when Lee goes for that corkscrew press that he really did not need to do. But, I get it, trying to put the opponent away, but did not need to do it. And I think he hurt his neck. But either way, he comes out with the win. Kind of to be expected because we knew one person for sure is going to be in this match. And then God's favorite champion shows up on AEW Elevation to let Lee know that pain and torture is coming his way. I don't think Lee's winning that match. I definitely don't think that Miro is losing that belt anytime soon. And if he is, I don't think it's going to be Lee Johnson when Lee Johnson beats Luther to qualify for the title match. But our main event was another one that I really enjoyed, and this is where Pac is taking on Chuck Taylor. And we've seen a lot of this best friends, death triangle, best friends and Pac kind of feud back and forth, but this was a nice match because we've seen AEW talent versus AEW talent, and we don't have a situation where even when there is AEW talent in the match, there's somebody there to take the pin who isn't, aka Matty Rankowski earlier in that tag match. This match was nice. It had a good pacing to it. Pac had some really, really nice moments where he was able to show off what he brings to the dance. And Chuck Taylor is somebody that is slowly being a little bit of a standout guy, especially as Trent is further and further taken away from us from injury and recovery. Now, let's turn towards AEW Dark. AEW Dark had some fun little moments in it. There wasn't necessarily any matches that stood out to me except for 2. But there weren't that many matches to begin with, so I guess maybe that's a good thing. I liked the Janela Sunny Kiss promo. I liked the Dark Order promo in the beginning. My problem with the Dark Order promo is that they're saying about how they're putting the tag teams on notice. They are here to go after the Young Bucks, et cetera, and then they're up against basically enhancement talent. Why not put them up against somebody who's a little bit more of, an AEW contracted talent? And then that promo makes more sense. It means more because their win feels more meaningful. So, that part of it felt a little weird. I also felt as though Diamante versus Big Swole, which is the match that stood out to me, was supposed to be the main event. It should have been the main event to me. This was a match that had some heat behind it. This was a match that had a lot going back and forth between the two of them. It started last week, but we're seeing continuation of storylines. And I was like, man, I really wish this had been the main event until I found out what the main event was. And then I was like, no, I'm actually much happier that match is the main event. And that is Dante Martin teaming up with the Varsity Blondes going up against the Acclaimed and Ryan Nemeth. It's a 6-man tag match. It's a continuation of this storyline between the Acclaimed and Varsity Blondes. And it's been a pretty straightforward story. Acclaim says bad shit about Julia Hart. Varsity Blondes gets upset about it, and they face off against each other in 8-man tag matches and now 6-man tag matches, slowly reducing the number of people before we just get Acclaimed and Varsity Blondes against each other. The only thing that is kind of off about this is something that actually works really well in its favor, because this is a 6-man tag match where neither of the two teams that have a problem with each other are involved in the decision. The finish comes when Dante Martin is the one who pins Ryan Nemeth. And it's smart. It's well done because it forces the actual payoff of Acclaimed and Varsity Blondes and seeing who wins between the two to be delayed a little bit further. Remember, this is just a 3-week story that we've seen. This has some legs to it. Give it some space to breathe. Speaking of giving space to breathe, we got to talk about this week's championship series. We find out that we're going to have a bunch of matches, 4 matches where there are going to be 2 each from each of the 2 pairings. If you remember from last week, that we're going to see Camille and Idol's team versus Aaron and Taryn's team, and then we're going to see Nick and Melina's team versus Pope and Velvet's team. So this week, we're going to see Marsh Rocket take on Thomas Latimer, Sky Blue take on Genocide, JTG take on Mims, and in the main event, Trevor Murdoch taking on Fred Rosser. And that's why I said, speaking of letting things breathe, because this, as we talked about last week, that match, Trevor Murdoch versus Fred Rosser, is probably the match that has the most story behind it, because Fred is on Nick's team. Trevor has a problem with Nick, but Trevor also kind of has a little bit of a problem with Fred Rosser based off of what happened with JTG's match against Chris Adonis for that national title. Both of them are faces, but there seems to be a little bit of problems between the two of them. But before we can get into any of that, we got to talk about our matches beforehand. So let's start with Latimer and Marsh Rocket. This one had nice athleticism in the sense that these were two kind of horses going at it, and you felt it. You really, really felt it in this match. This was one where both men had size and strength, brought it to the dance. There was a nice moment where Latimer is whipping Marsh Rocket into the corner, Irish whipping him, and doing some nice Irish whip reverses. And you can feel like the ring shaking a little bit. And they had a nice sense of pacing to it. This was actually a pretty well-paced match. Next was Jenna Side taking on Sky Blue. This match, and this was also had a symptom of well-known versus lesser-known. Latimer picks up the win over Marsh Rocket. Jenna's going to pick up the win over Sky. I feel as though Genocide is a little bit more of the known talent versus Sky Blue. And so she's not picking up the win. Lo and behold. But match of the night, I think, has to go to JTG taking on Mims. This match was really, really good because I don't expect that much from Mims. Not to downgrade him or anything like that, but he's one of the guys in the NWA who is not very well known. He's not a standout guy. He doesn't have a lot of storylines behind him. But what he does bring is a fiery passion, and you really saw that in this match. And it works when you have somebody well to play off of. Now, they do have a little bit of a botch towards the end. I'm not really sure who to blame for it. Basically, JTG was getting Mims up in his finisher, and Mims, I don't know, just kind of slid out of it. It felt as though it could have been a situation where Mims just was so beat up he could not stay in the position almost. If you don't know JTG's finisher, it's basically like he gets you up into what looks like it's going to be a razor's edge, but then he turns it into a kind of a cutter. And while he had Mims up, Mims slides out of it, and it just feels as though part of that is you got to be able to help the guy hold you up. You have to be able to balance properly. And I think Mims just lost his balance just because of other things that happened in the match. And then when JTG actually did hit the cutter, I feel it wasn't fully flush on Mims's neck and shoulder area. He was coming down more on his tailbone as opposed to his back and shoulders. So that part was a little bit off. However, if you remove those two elements, those two little moments from the match itself is very, very good. And I got to say, probably would be match of the night for overall Dark Powerrr. Maybe. But I could also see the Jungle Boy Mark Quinn match. That one was really good, as well as Pac Chuck. That one had some nice moments as well. Get a chance to check out all of them if you can. But let's talk about this main event now. And in this main event, we have Fred Rosser and Trevor Murdoch going at it. Nick Aldis is in the background. You can see him there. He's on the announce table doing what he can to egg on Trevor and get under Fred's skin. Egg on Fred and get under Trevor's skin and support his team. And this has some backfiring for Nick's team, because the more that Nick tries to get under Trevor Murdoch's skin, the more Trevor Murdoch hurts Fred Rosser. And you got to feel bad for Fred Rosser. This match has a nice little moment where you kind of think, oh shit, Trevor's going to fall off, bust his ass, and maybe die. Luckily, he doesn't. He is able to pull out the win. JTG beat Mims. I forgot about to let you know who won the match. But Trevor picks up the win over Fred Rosser. And Nick's team is the only team that does not have points. Which brings me to the final thing of how this championship series is scored. A win is 5 points. I think they said a DQ is 3 or something like that. And a loss is nothing. And it's interesting that the world champion is the only guy without points right now, his team. Particularly because this world champion goes to extreme lengths, including doing things that does not make sense in order to protect that championship. And the whole key is that whoever wins is protected. So we're going to have to see how Nick comes back, how he bounces back next week with better strategy and better planning. And as he points out to Galley, of course, him and Galley are going at it, why couldn't Strictly Business be a team? If they had been able to be a team, they'd be able to run roughshod, which, I mean, to be fair, you could probably see. They usually do. So the question here is this going to be the moment where we finally figure out who is going to take that world title from Nick? He's been holding it for a mighty long time. We're going to have to see what happens. But that's going to be at a later date. That most likely, if he does lose that title, is going to be at that NWA 73 pay-per-view. But we're going to see who is positioned as the challenger as the weeks go on in this championship series. So, guys, I want to say thank you once again for tuning in. Remember to hit that like button, comment, share, subscribe. Catch me on Fusion of Honor with my co-host, three-time baby making champ Ness, as we cover everything that happens on MLW Fusion and Ring of Honor. So until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll catch you later.